Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Leanie Lambrink. A Dawson City man's second-degree murder trial started today. Kane Morgan is accused of killing Kevin Edward McGowan in 2018. The case began with jury selection, then opening arguments. Chris McIntyre brings us the latest.
About 100 people were summoned to jury selection this morning, and selection was quick. It only took 2 hours for lawyers to choose the 12 people that would decide Kane Morgan's fate. Morgan has pled not guilty to second-degree murder, but he does admit causing McGowan's death by blunt force trauma. This case will center around whether or not the Crown can prove he intended to kill Kevin Edward McGowan. McGowan died in downtown Dawson in the early hours of April 30th, 2018, after an altercation with Morgan. McGowan had just recently moved here from BC to work as a chef. In the opening arguments today, the Crown said it would be calling on 8 civilian witnesses, 1 RCMP officer who responded to the incident, and the physician who performed the autopsy. The prosecution said the evidence from the civilian witnesses and the RCMP officer focused on the timeline between 6 and 7 p.m. on April 29th to the afternoon of the 30th. The evidence will look at 3 phases: the house party both Morgan and McGowan attended, the street where the incident occurred, and the events after the killing. The trial is expected to last 9 days. Kane Morgan's family was in court today, sitting right behind him. Chris McIntyre, CBC News, Dawson City.
Nunavut's health system is getting a $35 million boost. The federal and territorial governments signed 2 bilateral agreements today. Canada's Minister of Health was in Iqaluit for the announcement. The money will be used for things like ensuring access to Inuit-specific, culturally relevant care and training local home care workers. Nunavut's Minister of Health says elder care is also a priority.
We're going to be able to do more in terms of the services and supports that we can offer to elders. We're talking about things like expanding home care programs, looking at how we can train more Nunavut residents, specifically Inuit, into healthcare work around providing for elders, so personal support worker type of positions.
Maine says there is a lot of work ahead. Some of the improvements he wants to see include increasing the number of Inuit in healthcare positions and training Inuit in midwifery. The federal government signed a similar agreement with the NWT last month. With March break travel just around the corner, health officials across the country are bracing for a rise in cases of the measles. Reported cases this year have already exceeded the dozen reported in all of last year. The CBC's Peter Cowan has more.
Just because there aren't any cases right now in Atlantic Canada doesn't mean health officials aren't worried, and what they're asking people to do is check their vaccination status. For people who were born before 1970, it's less of a concern because they were likely exposed to measles as a child. Then the measles vaccine was introduced, but for a long period of time, only 1 dose was given. Public health officials now say 2 doses is ideal to ensure long-lasting protection. So the advice from one infectious disease doctor is if you've only had 1 dose, it might be good to get another.
If they've had 1 dose of a measles vaccine, and for example, you're traveling abroad, you might be exposed to measles because you're in an area of higher transmission, it's a very good idea to get that 2nd dose of a measles vaccine.
March is a busy travel time for a lot of areas, especially as children get March break or into Easter break, and so the advice is that people should be getting that protection before they travel. Some areas like Europe and Florida are seeing outbreaks of measles, and the concern is that children and adults could bring that disease back to Canada. In fact, we're seeing this now in a number of provinces. The biggest concern is Quebec, where they're seeing the most cases in Canada, and some of the cases they're seeing aren't directly linked to travel, which is a concern. They're targeting their vaccination campaign at younger children because some vaccination rates in schools can be as low as 30%.
Schools and kindergartens or daycare centers are places that are propice to propagation. So if we first, they are the places, if we want to increase our coverage, vaccine coverage is the place where we have to focus on and priority. And of course, we know that those are the places that we will have more risk of transmission or having big outbreaks.
British Columbia is the most recent province. They announced their first case yesterday. The other provinces that have seen cases are Ontario and Saskatchewan. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
A survivor of the federal Indian day school system is taking her case to Canada's highest court. She's fighting to update her claim for compensation from Ottawa's multi-billion-dollar settlement agreement. Olivia Stefanovic explains.
I was also ashamed to share my abuse and my trauma.
Margaret Swan reads one among hundreds of complaints she's gathered against a multi-billion-dollar settlement agreement she helped create and then quickly came to question.
I thought I would fall apart.
Not so long ago, Swan became a lead plaintiff in a class action against Ottawa for harms caused at federal Indian day schools, institutions like residential schools, except children went home at night.
Students who attended these schools were subject to sexual, physical, and psychological abuse.
In 2019, a deal was cemented between day school survivors and the federal government. The cost was initially pegged at just over $1 billion, but CBC News has learned it's now close to $6 billion. Whatever the cost, the government says it wanted to do one thing better.
What we tried to do was simplify the process here in order that survivors had easier access to the settlement monies without necessarily having to go through the trauma that they had to.
They designed a claim process to avoid re-traumatizing survivors, headed by the claims administrator Deloitte and the law firm Gowling. All survivors had to do was fill out a form, and that's when problems began. It asked a lot, and for some, too much.
Felt traumatized again, victimized again.
You have reached Gowling WLG, class counsel.
And when victims reached out for help,
the period to file a claim has now closed.
They felt no one was there.
I felt compelled to just sign it, and I guess I suffered the consequences. That's the Waterhen School. Yeah.
Waldron hired her own lawyers to update her claim. She was denied. Now CBC News has learned they're asking Canada's highest court to intervene.
These aren't insurance claims. These are claims dealing with real people who were victims of abuse as children.
Both Deloitte and Gowling declined CBC's requests for interviews. When asked to respond over email to concerns about the agreement, a spokesperson said the firms can't comment on what they called third-party views. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
Hay River's only high-rise apartment building is still sitting empty. It's been almost 5 years since a fire forced residents to evacuate. Public health issues mean no one has been able to live there ever since. New owners took over the high-rise in 2022 and hoped to reopen in a year. But that didn't happen, and there's still no timeline for when it might. The company who owns the high-rise says they're still in pre-development and the project is moving forward.
I don't really want to comment too much because I'm working with a couple of groups and trying to ensure that we are able to bring it to market in the most efficient manner. I do want to say that we've done a lot of work as far as reports, engineering reports for the building and such. So we are just looking at what would be the most effective way to start the repairs and maintenance.
Sifildine says they want to make the apartments available as soon as they can. They say they understand the community is dealing with housing issues. CBC spoke with Hay River SAO Glenn Smith for this story. He says the town doesn't have an update on the high-rise apartment and no permit applications are pending. People in Yellowknife may have seen flames and billowing smoke in the air over the lunch hour. A truck was on fire in the BMO parking lot. Fire and ambulance responded to the call. An RCMP spokesperson says the cause of the fire is not clear and the fire department will carry out the initial examination. Air North shares are set to go on the market. In a letter to citizens of the Vuntagwitchin First Nation, the airline says the move will help the company buy 2 new planes. Shares will run $12,500 apiece. Buyers will get 4 one-way flights a year. Right now, the First Nations Development Board owns 49% of the airline. It wants to give citizens first access to the shares, but there are critics. Some in the First Nations say they needed more notice of the airline's plans. Air North says it can't comment until the share offering is confirmed. A new report suggests more and more Canadians are struggling to pay monthly bills, especially when it comes to mortgage and credit card payments. Scott Peterson explains.
What we're seeing from the survey is that higher interest rates are really forcing people into a position where they're unable to pay their bills, and delinquency rates, that's where people are not paying their bills over 3 months, is rising, starting with mortgage delinquency rates. And this is troubling in the sense that there's hopefully some equity built into the homes that people have bought. Over the last 12 months, mortgage delinquency has risen 52%. It's below about 1/10 of 1%, but the trend is clear that it is rising. Delinquency rates in Ontario and BC are particularly high because of higher mortgage costs associated with real estate there. In Ontario, it's up 135%, and BC up 62%. A delinquency is when someone hasn't paid their bill in 90 days. Now, younger homeowners under 36 are being particularly impacted, and for those refinancing now, this is part of the problem, that you might be used to lower rates that you arranged just a few years ago, but now monthly payments up $457 on average. And again, Ontario and BC, where it's a little bit more expensive, that can be closer to $700 extra per month on refinancing. Non-mortgage debt, and this is troubling as well. This is credit card debt. This is line of credits, where generally the interest rates are higher on. That is up 29% year over year. Now, it's still in the neighborhood of less than 1%, but again, the trend is that people are delinquent on paying those back. And part of the problem here is our thirst for credit. Non-mortgage debt, higher than all the others, was up 4% last year as we loaded up on credit cards and our line of credit, and it was up by $16 billion in total last year. New credit card growth was up 11% last year. 6 million new credit cards were issued. And part of the problem here is there's a double whammy, that one, we're paying a lot more interest, and it's tougher for a lot of Canadians to pay their bills from month to month, but we're also seeing increased spending, and a lot of that going onto credit cards and line of credits where the interest rates are prohibitive. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
A Nunavik leader has passed away. Giuseppe Palayat died on Saturday. He had been chair of the Nunavik Marine Region Wildlife Board from 2014 to 2018. He sat on the Nunavik Regional Health Board for more than a decade. Palayat died at 76 years old. His family says he was surrounded by loved ones.
Nineteen 40 lalawam 50 saling luwang kalawang kemak tualo lakalawam pilaktok talawama wakalaw yalak sumatan sibulak pak pilaktok tawama pilakta simanak sumigilak tawalak sumigama.
When my grandfather, Charlie Chaplin, first arrived in Hollywood, it was a place of dreams. But my grandfather clashed with some very powerful forces in America.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Stand away from the stand!
I'm Una Chaplin. This is Hollywood Exiles. It's about a war of ideas that tore apart friendships, ended careers, and affected families like mine.
Hollywood Exiles, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
All of this, just single detached homes?
Yes.
What do we know? I think we can explain.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Bad hair days.
We all have them.
Even as scientists. I think I know my place. It's not making art. What? This is a whale? That's incredible.
I'm piloting a boat in the fjords of Norway. I love this job.
Someone broke into my gym locker, stole my hearing aid. I feel naked without my hearing aid. And my clothes. didn't catch up. It's about the body hair, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot.
How do you get someone to care about something they rarely, if ever, get to see? That's the question that drove two Yukon artists to create an unusual art project. The CBC's Katrin Pilkington has the story.
You're looking at a herd of caribou in the making. Built from plywood and glass. Over the weekend, volunteers gathered at Grey Mountain Primary School in Whitehorse, responding to a call to help build the animals. These caribou are part of a performance series aimed at bringing remote Yukon to urban centers. They'll be used to help share how Northerners feel about the iconic animals.
I think I came and she came too, just to see what they're doing and be able to talk and let the public know that caribou to us is really important.
The idea came to Leanne Charlie in a dream she quickly shared with co-creator Nicholas Hyatt.
I kind of woke up with an idea, sort of visualizing a herd coming out of the ground and going back into it, and just had a flood of reasons why, and this idea of caribou coming from the earth and returning to it. I wrote it all out in a text to Nick and was with kind of like an invitation, should we try and make this together in some way? Often herds are really far away. You know of them, you know of stories of thousands of them moving across the land, but not everybody, and especially in urban places, have seen this before. So the idea of a transportable herd of caribou that holds stories of people's very close relationships with caribou can be something that one could walk right up to.
On Monday night, the caribou were able to make their first migration to the Kwanlin Dun Center. There, they came to life.
I felt very transported to the time and place and embodiment that sort of is trying to get us to relate to.
Have you seen caribou in person before?
Yes. Yeah.
And feel at all close to that? It didn't capture anything of what that's like.
It feels like what I felt like in there times 100 every single time. You're just in awe, and you also feel an energy that goes beyond something you can express.
I appreciated the songs and the sounds and the conversations, and seeing the caribou herd in front of us, along with the lighting. I'm really happy that I came here.
Thank you, caribou. It is because of you we are living. I respect you, caribou. I love you, caribou.
The group says this performance was just the beginning. They plan to migrate the herd across the north in the months to come. Katrin Pilkington, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Dog mushing fans, mark your calendars for April 15th. That's when racers will take off for the 2024 Nunavut Quest. The 235-kilometer race will start in Arctic Bay and finish in Pond Inlet, a Nunavut Quest tradition.
It was a beautiful sight to see the dog mushers. Some go so smoothly, and they are not all the same. Some dogs are fast.
Organizers say there will also be a hockey tournament in Pond Inlet at the same time. They say it'll be a great time to visit their community. The first Nunavut Quest was held back in 1999. It marked the creation of Nunavut. It's been a tough go for Team Nunavut at the Canadian Men's Curling Championship. The Latimer rink is representing the territory at the Brier, and they haven't won a game yet. Today, they faced Brad Gushu and Team Canada. The team says they're starting to get used to the ice, and despite the loss, their earlier game against Alberta went really well.
We had a good start to the game, and we played well throughout the game. Unfortunately, we weren't able to steal the deal in the end, but there's a lot of confidence, and we learned a lot, so we're looking forward on building that for the rest of the week.
Team Yukon is on the ice right now, set to face off against Ontario. Nunavut and the NWT each play again tomorrow morning. A YouTuber from New York caused quite a stir when he visited a small Saskatchewan community last month in a good way. Cree elders were surprised and a bit confused when he started speaking to them in their language. Ari Smith can communicate in about 50 languages and has more than 6 million followers on his YouTube channel. Take a look.
His brother. Yeah. Snamagosian Nehiwan. Absis, yeah.
For me, it's just very gratifying to be able to like do what I do while at the same time helping preserve their language and culture in whatever small way.
Hey, nice to meet you, man.
Learn Cree.
Yeah.
We had this language program that we just launched called repeataftermecree.com. How do I promote this? How could I get it out there? Seeing like he spoke all kinds of languages. Since he's learning indigenous languages and helping promote it, I thought it'd be a good idea just to reach out to his YouTube channel. I'll just kind of shoot my shot and see what happens. And if not, that's fine. He's probably a busy guy. A week later, I get a reply through my email saying that he was interested in my concept. And then it went really quickly after that. It was amazing, to have a guy like that be willing to come in, learn our language and promote it to his audience of millions of people that he has following him in terms of language.
I mean, I've done this now with, indigenous communities across North and South America as well. It's a beautiful experience every time, but this time in particular was really special because I had Patrick there to kind of guide me and, take me around. And
the elders didn't really know why they were gathering there, right? They just knew that something was happening. And so I had to explain to them that we had a special guest over, that he was helping to promote our language, our culture.
The elders at first were kind of like, who is this weirdo with the camera? Like they were like, what is this guy? And then when I started speaking Cree, they were kind of like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
So they had a conversation back and forth. We talked about, how do we reach our young generation? And, when you do it through platforms like YouTube or TikTok or Facebook, right? This is a way to connect with them where they're at.
Oh, yeah. But it turns out that there is actually a group of people for whom what I do turns out to actually have some value, and that's indigenous people across North America whose languages are endangered and in many cases dying.
And by him doing so, he's this embodiment of a person that says, hey, you're wrong. Like anyone could learn the language. I learned the language and I'm speaking the language.
Thank you for agreeing to come and visit our community. So the elders that you can speak our language.
The comments that I've seen from his videos, from his shorts and reels that he did from this content, I see a lot of the young indigenous, not just young, but even older crowds saying, man, if he could learn, I could learn.
Freezing temperatures couldn't keep a group of Yellowknifers from going for a dip in the lake last night. They were just one part of a Canada-wide event raising money for a podcast. And as Mahnor Mubarak found out, the bitter cold was actually part of the appeal.
There you go.
Would you ever think about doing this?
I was in the pool!
Jumping into a frozen Great Slave Lake at minus 25 degrees?
That's it.
That's what these people did, and they're doing it for a good cause. Canadian Geographic's Explorer podcast.
There you go.
It's good to support public broadcasting and independent broadcasting because, as you know, in media, it's very expensive to bring stories to society and to the community. So it's good to support storytelling.
The event took place at Arctic Duchess Adventures, and some of these people say they found it exhilarating.
It was kind of like a zing sensation, followed by numbness, actually. So you feel it's an instant shock value. Definitely had my heart pump in there. And then I was like, oh, I think I was more afraid of it than what it actually was. Like when I got in there, I was like, totally could do this.
Keep breathing. There you go.
Oh, it was exhilarating. That first moment you jump in, you get this like cold gasp, like, what am I doing? And then everything just tightens up. And then after a couple seconds, like, okay, I can breathe.
It's worse the second time.
Wow.
The moment getting out and just that little jaunt across the ice to get into the sauna, everything just starts tingling. Like, it feels like needles all over your body. And then you get inside and it's nice and warm and everything feels A-okay.
Team NWT is still accepting donations until the end of the week. Mahnur Mubarak, CBC News, Yellowknife.
National Geographic. Polar plunge.
That is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/north. Thanks for watching. I'm Leanie Lambrink. Have a good night.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A Russian scheme here
shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job?
Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
Do lonely people eat more cereal? Can love help us live longer?
I feel alive.
Does heartbreak make music better?
I love this music.
Could AI compose the next masterpiece of our time?
Robot composers conducting robot music.
OMG.
Do you really need to wait 30 minutes after eating before swimming, even if the last thing you ate was cereal?
I'm enjoying every mouthful.
When you get curious, you get CBC.
Closing this case gets you one step closer to you getting back on the squad and keeping you out of prison.
You're not a detective, you're a con artist.
You have a driver's license, right?
Of course, I'm 9. If you couldn't be a cop, who would you be?
Nothing. My dad raised me to be a cop. That's who I am. Stay here.
You're adorable.
You guys are making this entire station look like a circus.
He's busy trying to solve a murder. What are you doing?
Thanks for having my back.
Look at you.
Is this your girlfriend?
This is not my girlfriend.
She's way too cool to be your girlfriend.
She's not way too cool to be my girlfriend.
We've won the costume contest every year. Bunny!
Oh, they're squishing me. What have we done?
Friggin' frig off.
What
in the flying friggity frig was that all about?
That was hilarious.
It's just a bit of fun.
Son of a Critch. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Name something that gets you more excited than hanky-panky.
Gummies.
What?
Gummies.
Family Feud Canada. Watch free on CBC Gem.